Blessed be everyone. Hello and welcome to another episode of Black Magic Talk. We have the wonderful Daniel. Daniel, how do you say your last name?
Aurelian.
Aurelian.
Yeah.
Kind of like sounds like from one of them fantasy books almost. But we're
Yeah,
here
well,
to
it was
learn
inspired.
about Daniel. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you're right. Yeah, if you've read any of like the Rune Guild's kind of publications, you kind of
hmm
know what Aurelian is. But we can dive into it as well for sure.
Oh yeah, you guys can definitely talk about that. But first, we're going to talk about you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you came to be on your path, and then also your background. Take as long as you need, like I said, and just talk about you.
Sure. Well, I'll start from the present and maybe kind of bounce around chronologically. So currently, I kind of describe what I do as running the Hogwarts of the yoga world. So my whole kind of moniker is make yoga magic again, and that's a big conversation to have. So we can come back to that. But I really think people have a misunderstanding of what yoga is, and also a lot of occultists kind of misunderstand what magic is or how it came to be the modern version of magic as well. But how I got started was I always kind of had a weird curiosity for unraveling things. I used to take things apart, put them back together. I don't know over there if you guys have this thing, we call it council pickup, where people just pretty much put trash, well, kind of seemingly trash on the front of the doorstep once or twice a year. And then our local council comes and picks it up and, throws it away. But people put out like old speakers and things. Like, for example, if a stereo blows, they would put out the whole stereo where the speakers might work or the amp might work, right? So I used to go and pick these things up, take them apart, and try to put them back together. And I think that just kind of exemplifies my entire approach to life. I really like tinkering behind the scenes of things. I like to take things apart and try to put them back together. And that's what I started doing as I started to have a teenage existential crisis somewhat, as a lot of people do. I grew up in a very loose Christian-ish background. I grew up with a single mom and my sister. Um, don't really know my dad, and yeah, like we didn't really have a religious properly upbringing, but we kind of my mom had this loose acceptance that you die, if you're good you go to heaven, bad go to hell, and that was kind of it. And there was like not really any explanation behind that. And so as time went on, I started to question what that actually means, the logistics of it, and couldn't really get answers from my immediate family or close friends. So I started scouring the very reliable world of the internet for answers and didn't really find anything. I kind of started obviously with Abrahamic religions. I kind of read little bits and pieces of Scientology, Buddhism. I don't know, things just weren't really clicking. I was really just scouring the surface of stuff, looking for like some kind of logic or something that gelled with me. Didn't really find anything, kind of gave up for a while. The thing that really was a tipping point for me, though, I was, I think, 20 years old, and I went out to a nightclub, ended up going home with a girl there. Very life-changing moment. The thing that was life-changing, though, was the next morning we had a conversation because she had pictures all over her wall of like these just crazy fantasy images. It was really, some were really dark, some were really bright, and it was her drawings from her dreams. And so this sparked a whole conversation about the dream realm. And she was from Cambodia, and she explained that she grew up with ghosts as part of her every day, right? And for me, I didn't believe in ghosts. I didn't believe in anything. I was agnostic, bordering atheist. But the thing is, we kind of give credibility to people who we respect, or people who we think of as normal in our own world, right? So if it was a crazy person, just some random person on the side of the street telling me about they draw their dreams and ghosts and etc., I probably wouldn't have given much credence. Because it was someone who I considered normal, I was like, this person seems so grounded in every other way, but yet she's talking about this. I need to look into this more. So I searched, I kind of ghost hunted for about 9 months to a year. didn't really find any information, nearly gave up that. And then I ended up bumping into someone randomly after that when I was right at like ready to give up again. And we got into a conversation about magic. And again, it was a guy who was working in a sales job that I was also a part of. I was, doing a lot of high-end sales, high-ticket sales, very business-minded. And this person who was very business-minded was talking about magic. Still thought he was a little bit nuts, but he gave me a book to read, which was Hermetic Magic by Stephen Flowers. And I love the history aspects of it. I love, it seemed like it was more on the academic front and felt a bit more grounded. And yeah, so I kind of put a last-ditch effort out to the universe to get an answer. I was kind of at the point where I was like, I probably would have never gone up. Maybe it was a bit of a bluff, but I just put out I found a basic invocation at the back of the book, and just with all my effort, all my emotion, put out this call out to the universe to give me something tangible to shift my mind, at least prompt me to search a bit more. And then I had a dream, I won't go too much into it because it's obviously a lot of subjective things that happened in a short amount of time, but I had a dream about a snake. But then it wasn't just a dream, it was a lot of things leading up to that, where I was on a train the next day on the way to the city. There were these 3 older ladies sitting next to me on this 4-seater, and they got up, and I swear where one of them sitting, there was this S shape on made out of noodle flavoring. It's the most random thing ever. And then I went and helped my mum, who empty out her shed at the time. I grew up in that house, and I've never seen a snake there. And then there was this massive python clearing out the shed that I just all these trickle of things that I think just prompted me to keep searching. And then fast forward through that, I just started devouring as much occult stuff as I could. I was getting into, really into the Temple of Set's work. So Don Webb, Michael Aquino. I got really into, Edward Thorson, Stephen Flowers. And I kind of was on the fence about venturing down, joining the Temple of Set or the Rune Guild. And I ended up deciding on the Rune Guild mainly because at the time I had a lot of easy access to a lot of the materials, and so it was starting to really affect my worldview anyway, and it was just kind of the path of least resistance. It wasn't a big aha moment that I still love the whole philosophy of the Temple of Set and studying philosophy, but the Rune Guild was really calling me, and so things really switched when I found a book called Aegisiel by Michael Kelly. So that was a massive turning point for me because, I don't know, it was the first time, I loved, Edward's books, and I loved, all the other occult books I was reading, but it just felt for the first time that someone was just kind of explaining my already innate sense of the world, sense of the universe. It was just so well written, so practical, and I don't know, it just really landed something for me. So I ordered his next book, his previous book, Apophis, and the 7 Heads of the Dragon curriculum, everything. So I ended up applying for an apprenticeship with Michael Kelly through the Rune Guild, and so that's kind of been my main lineages, I guess, of magic. So the Rune Guild and runes, and then Michael Kelly's 7 Heads curriculum and Apophis. And then just a lot of, additional strange things happened over a period of time. So it's about 13 years later from when all that happened. And I ended up becoming a yoga teacher and diving deeper into classical Tantra. So what I realized is that a lot of what I've learned, both from the Rune Guild and the runic curriculum, it's very heavily influenced by yoga and tantric yoga. Even the 7 Head curriculum of Michael Kelly, so it's very, very connected to Kenneth Grant. I mean, even Aleister Crowley, he's got multiple books on the importance of yoga, and I think there's on both sides. So I guess there would be two two types of people that I would mainly work with, and that's occultists, who I'm trying to explain that yoga isn't just wearing tight pants and doing downward dog. And then I'm trying to get the yogis in the really tight pants doing tons of downward dog to explain to them that there's so much more than just a physical practice. And it's tough because I'm kind of getting like, thrown around by both sides. Both sides don't like the other. And then in addition to that, there's a neo-tantric movement, which is, a whole nother kettle of fish, where I'm trying to explain that Tantra is not just all about sex. In fact, that's like less than 1% of the whole tradition. So I'm pissing a lot of people off, to be fair. But I'm really trying to do it through, believe it or not, out of love, being like, we're actually all kind of working with a similar lineage of tradition. And that lineage of tradition does it in so many different ways and always has. So yeah, that's, long explanation, but essentially, yeah, to summarize, now I'm really trying to bridge the gap between yoga, tantra, and magic, and really trying to break it down into the fundamental tools and the technology. Like, yoga to me is a technology, so it can be applied to any spiritual tradition and enhance it. And that's not just a modern idea, but there's a lot of evidence that this was always the case. There's, even in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras and, Abhinavagupta, like some of the big yogis, they mention things like saying that, yoga is optionally theistic, in that it's not even, like Hindu culture, which I absolutely love and adore, will say that yoga is Hindu. But it's also trying to break it down from like a historical perspective, and what are the evidence of where yoga originated from, and then in a mythic context as well. And so in a mythic context, 100% you can say that yoga is Hindu from your practice of yoga, right? But there's a lot of evidence that yoga was used as a technology with other traditions, including Christianity, including atheism, like what we would consider atheism, in a way to self-explore, right? So you've got a cosmic map. Cool. Let's explore it with the practices of yoga. And then we can, kind of bridge all the gaps together. So yeah. Anyway, I could, Matt knows I could go on for forever about all this sort of stuff, but I'll leave it at that for now and see if you guys have any particular questions that you want to ask around any of that.
Well, I know in the research that that I saw that Hinduism was actually the very first religion, so it's older than even paganism. But I agree with you that even yoga can be a very spiritual upbringing or uptaking. Because I mean, in a way, you're kind of meditating while you're doing these poses, and again, your flexibility will come into it. And yoga is very good for. I also believe it's good uh, for weight loss as well. So, and in fact, I've been trying to do some of that stuff. I'm not flexible anymore. I found that I'm not as flexible as I used to be.
Yeah.
Even though I did gymnastics when I was, younger. But I love yoga, and I love the spirituality you get, and because you can meditate on that feeling and everything. But all right, I'm gonna give it over to Matt because he knows you a little bit more than me. But thank you for
100%.
sharing that.
No worries. I might just chime in on one little thing, just otherwise
Sure.
I'm going to end up forgetting about it. Because you said an interesting thing about that you heard that Hinduism was the first religion, and it's a great comment to make, because it asks, it begs the question as well, like, what is Hinduism? And that's the thing that people misunderstand as well, that like the term Hinduism is only a modern concept, in same as like paganism, right? So, and there's such cross parallels between like classical Indian religions and culture and European as well, in the way that, like OG Hinduism didn't consider itself Hindu. They were all independent folk practices, right? Similar how European was now. So, all the different tribes, all the different groups had their own particular practices, and there was some overlap. But Hinduism as we see it now is like really cool and really beautiful, but it's all kind of been lumped into one, and we tend to back project that into thinking that the entire country was this cohesive religion, and it just wasn't like that at all, as far as I know, and as far as the evidence shows. Because I feel like I try to balance out the practicalities, like not being an armchair occultist and just sitting there reading books and just repeating stuff that I read and trying things out and really getting my hands in there. But also I like to nerd out on the history behind everything, because if anything, it just helps us to understand, like, that what we're doing is not only like valid, but it's kind of similar to the way it's always been, in that everyone's just trying to figure it out. And there's so much gatekeeping these days, saying that you can't do this, you can't do that, this is the way it's doing. And a lot of the people that do that are they have no idea about the history and how these things have evolved. And I see that so much in the yoga world, where a yoga teacher will say this is the way things are, and it's such like a small speck on the grand like tree of the tradition. So yeah, but we can unpack that more later. But I just thought I'd touch on that as well, because it's so linked, to what you said as well.
Yeah, and that's why I think I was kind of drawn to it, because it is kind of you can add any little thing you want to, especially with magic. I know that I talk about this, that um, I'll have to take this out for YouTube, but at least for the Rumble people, um, I actually read in a book that you could make love while you're doing your magic to raise your vibrations. So, everything is on the table when it comes to magic. I don't just, lower my head and say, well, this is how it's done, that kind of thing. I'm open to all kinds of ideas, and, the all encompassing of yoga. I think, helps you bring whatever you do brings you back to that oneness, and so that you look inside yourself, because of course the third eye looks within. And you don't have to just follow the leader and do what everyone else does. You kind of bring your own uh way of doing things when it comes to yoga or meditation, or there's never one set way of doing anything, really, as long as you have the fundamental basics, basically. So I just wanted
Yeah,
to make that point.
yeah, 100%. It's definitely a balance. It's like it's trying to honor the tradition in seeing what people have done in the past, and seeing what works and why it's worked, and what traditions have carried on. But at the same time, not being too dogmatic into thinking that just the first thing you've been exposed to is the way, or that the person who taught it to the guru or whatever isn't also just a human being that has flaws, that has their own dogma and biases. And yeah, I think it's just I'm trying to find a balance between the two, for sure.
All right, well, I'll hand it over to my lovely co-host that is over this way. Go ahead, take it away, Matt, and it's been wonderful talking with you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was reading Paul Hewson's Mystical Origins of Tarot, and I was surprised to see the varying definitions everyone had of the tarot cards, because I had assumed there would just be pretty concrete definitions, but they're very varying, and that was real surprising.
Yeah, 100%. That's actually super relevant at the moment, because I'm collaborating with a good friend of mine, Cassandra. We're releasing a course on the tarot, and I really like her approach, because she's trained, like, she focused on the history. Like, she did her thesis on, what was it, medieval witchcraft, and I can't remember what. I'm kind of butchering whatever her thesis was called, but yeah, she's basically a historian, and really just nerds out on the history of things. And so I think, like, diving into that with her, she's like coming back to me being like, I can't find, any concrete sources. Like, these people say this, and these people say that, and these people say that. And so there's all these different theories. and we all go in with a bias to try to support whatever theory we've been told or would work well for us. And so it's like anything, right? We go in even though we won't admit it, we're going in with a kind of an agenda to be like, okay, cool. Well, I really like the Kabbalistic viewpoint, so I'm going to, just make sure that it kind of like steer it in that direction that it's always been, connected to the Kabbalah and all that sort of stuff. And yeah, we just don't know. I've heard rumors that it's from India originally, like it was derived from a card game. But again, I can't find any information. And like I like to invite just so much of that into what we're all doing, in that just like, cool, these people say this, these people say that, but I don't know. I really like this idea, so I'm just going to go with that for now until I find evidence to the contrary. We feel like we need to show up with this like 100% concrete evidence, and a lot of the time, especially in matters of like esotericism, it's just not usually the case. And even I nerd out all the scholarly sources of yoga and tantra and stuff, but that could change. Like right now, like I know so far certain aspects, like for example, there's never been up to 100 years ago a rainbow 7 chakra system. Never in any of the sources. That's a completely modern thing. But we could dig up tomorrow this mysterious Sanskrit parchment that does, right? And that would change it. But all we can say is like right now, so.
What's Cassandra's last name?
Polky.
Oh, okay. I thought it was I was gonna say Cassandra Ingman, like my teacher.
No.
Oh, that would be crazy funny though. That would be crazy funny.
It is a small world. I wouldn't be surprised. Like the crazy connections between like the magical world. I feel like we think that it's a lot more people than it is, and it is. But like I don't know. It's a mysterious web of weird.
I was gonna say because she's in Australia too, or also
cool.
She's also
okay,
in
I'll
Australia.
Have to look her up. Yeah, I haven't heard of her before, but I'll definitely look her up.
Mystery Witch School is her website. Mystery Witch School.
Cool. Mystery Witch School. Check it out.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Matt. When you said Cassandra, I went Ingman.
I feel like I'm curious to how long you let these podcasts go for, because I feel like the three of us could talk about a lot of things for a long time. So just let me know if you're really trying to keep it to a certain time. Because
not really, but what I really wish we could talk about is what's going on in Australia politically wise. But YouTube doesn't tend to like a lot of stuff about politics. So I would have to cut anything out for YouTube. But Rumble is anything goes. But no, we'll just.
I don't know. I don't really get much into the political side of things unless it like directly affects what I'm doing. Like honestly, it's such a rabbit hole that I like to saying that like you can do everything, just not all at once. Maybe in like 5-10 years, once I've bought a patch of land here and I'm setting up I don't know a castle and all these things, and I want to make sure that like I can have my castle on the hill and all this sort of stuff. Maybe the like politics and stuff will become more relevant, but I kind of keep one ear open to it. But yeah, I think I'm more interested in the immediate connections I have rather than the but I'm also open to
well
ideas.
Just one thing, how do you feel about Australia going cashless?
Yeah, I feel like so I have been into crypto for years now, and I'm really supportive of like the idea of Bitcoin and a lot of things that kind of make it self-custodial, but everything has a shadow aspect, right? It's I think it's inevitable for a lot of aspects of life, but I don't think it's going to be that quickly that it goes completely cashless. And for example, I used to run events here on the Sunshine Coast where we would it's like a community event where we get people. So it's like a once-a-month event, and we get a guest speaker in, and we got a guy who actually builds blockchains and financial technology, and he talked about creating. What he's really trying to do is get communities to make their own kind of exchange system, right? And he's got templates for this. So he's got like apps that you can download that basically like if it was just the three of us, right? Three of us, and we just want to exchange between us. We've each got our own little abode, or maybe our own little kingdom, and we're wanting to like not use any outside money unless we have to, and try to keep it kind of flowing within us. And so we kind of use a token-based system, and there's lots of ideas. But the interesting thing was there was a lot of people on the Sunshine Coast that were super keen. They're like, oh my god, this is great, like we need this, f the capitalism, all this sort of stuff. But we, out of the 50, 60, 70 people that came, only 2 people downloaded the app and started using it. And so a lot of people talk a good game about wanting to support that, but most people just go with the path of least resistance. So it's a big conversation. So to circle back, what do I think about Australia going cashless? Probably the same thing I think about the rest of the country going cashless, is that it's going to be an inevitable switch to a more digitalized way of exchange, but we also have a say in what that looks like. So CBDs, like, nah. CBDCs, not a fan of at all, because, decentralized finance, I'm super, super keen for. But again, the shadow aspect, I don't know if I should say this, but I feel like most of society aren't ready for self-sovereignty. See what happens. Like, we've been babied so much, right? In Australia, I remember learning in school that when we did law, that there was someone who got drunk, jumped the fence into someone's backyard. They were on the ocean. They jumped into the ocean, hurt themselves on the rock, and then they sued the person's house, even though they jumped into their fence, and won because they didn't have a sign saying "Don't jump in the ocean," and there's rocks there. Someone broke into someone's house. Someone crawled through the roof, trying to obviously get into the house. They came outside, fell through the roof into the kitchen, onto some knives or something like that, cut themselves, sued the family, and won because those knives weren't properly stored. It's just, I feel like we're so babied in a lot of aspects, and I'm sure it happens in America as well, in that things like crypto and self-custody, I've lost money through crypto because I just didn't pay attention to where I was sending the money, and I can't get it back. No one's babying me, right? Whereas in a bank, I transfer it to the wrong thing, I can get it back. So it depends. I think for us to really evolve and, separate from that a little bit, we need to take more self-sovereignty and self-responsibility. And to circle back to this whole podcast, I think like true magic is all about starting to become more self-sovereign. So the lineages of magic magic as I understand it, is not just about like manifesting this or that. It's actually starting to strip back of all the layers of the conditioning that we've thought is what we want and how we operate and who to rely on. And then kind of getting a bird's eye view and being like, actually, I'm responsible for all the good stuff and all, not all of it, shit happens. The universe it's got some random elements to it. But then that can be either like super liberating and beautiful, or it can be terrifying. And I think this is where people, the point where it splits between magicians and, I don't know, non-magicians, normies, muggles, whatever you want to say, in that the idea, like, I'm not saying this is the truth, but let's just say this is like, this happens. You strip back all the layers, you realize that there is no other, like, there is no meaning to life. There is nothing out there that isn't what you believe, what we all collectively believe it is, right? And so we're all looking to, rules to the game and a meaning to the game. And what if it's just a big sandbox and we're all just co-creating? What if it's less like, a story-based driven RPG and more like Minecraft, right? And, we all have, there is stories you can follow. We can find each other's stories, but we all co-created it. Like, I don't know. And I'm saying that's not the truth, but imagine that that's what you realize. And that can be terrifying for people to think that there's actually no like solid absolute rules to the game, and we have to make our own and find people to play with. And for people like us, that could be like, fuck yeah, like we can do anything we want, and we just have to find what we love and the people we will love to share that with, and to kind of live a life by what we believe ourselves to be the virtues of life. And hopefully that's for the better good of everyone, or the majority at least. Or you can be like, oh my god, this is terrifying. No, then I have to make my own decisions, and then I have to like do this. Like, no, cool. Or, like, who can I need a parent right now. Like, cool. And immediately default back to, Sky Daddy or whatever your, belief system is. So, not saying there's anything wrong with Sky Daddy. He's pretty, he's got some cool power moves. But, yeah. Anyway, that's big.
I guess if you like the Old Testament, he's kind of like vengeful, smite you.
People love that shit.
All right.
People definitely have like that that kind of kink, Sky Daddy kink.
Yeah. Yep. I'm sorry, Matt. Go ahead. Oh, you're over here.
No, it's good. Yeah. So, I mean, how do you feel the differences between doing live events and doing stuff online?
Yeah, it's so different. I think my business has primarily moved online now. I think just 2020 kind of forced that in a lot of ways for a lot of people. So on a like lucrative side, it's so much more opportunity because you have access to everyone in the world, and it's much easier to find your niche. Whereas if you're, kind of geographically confined, you kind of got to hope that there's a bunch of weirdos in your area that are keen for what you do. And you're much more likely to find that if you can, extend out to the rest of the planet. But I definitely wouldn't choose it if everything was the same. If I could, reach the same amount of people, if I could have everything the same, and it was either online or in person, I would pretty much choose in person every time, except I guess on the days that I don't want to wear pants, like I can't do that in person. So, but here you have no idea what's going on down here. So, yeah, but it's it's like a double-edged sword, right? It's everything has benefits and drawbacks, but yeah, I much prefer connecting with people in person. It's just, it just feels different, and you can get more feedback immediately through body language and all that sort of stuff, and the energy of a room. It's just so different. But yeah,
people can't just click an X and leave. They have to actually get out of the
exactly. Yeah. And I have a sales background as well, and I was very lucky to get exposed to an early age of sales psychology, and that's why I really click with a lot of what like Temple Set called, or a lot of traditions called lesser magic, and very much like on LeVay's kind of side of like glamour magic and all that sort of thing, because I think even though we're doing greater magic, it still has to trickle out through the physical. And it could be, say we do a working to enable us to get a new job or a new position or something like that, it still trickles out through the way that, we might just have an interaction that boosts our mood that day, so we feel more confident, and so we're exuding more confidence and charisma and joy. And then it just so happens that we bump into this person, and instead of being in natural introvert mode where we're like, I don't want to converse with this person, you're like, actually, no, I'm in a good mood today because of that random thing that happened, so I'm going to converse with this person, and it just leads to like a new opportunity or something like that. And so even though we're doing greater magic, I think it still trickles through us, and the more that we can make use of these, it's Don Webb wrote a book on vampiric magic kind of recently, the last few years. But the thing is, it's like a lot of people have like, oh my god, vampire magic, it's like you're draining people. It's not like that at all. Like what his version of like vampiric magic is able to harness energy and inspiration, right? And you guys, I know Matt a lot more than I know you, but I think magicians are naturally creative people, right? And so a lot of the time with creativity, we want to be inspired. And I like this quote. It's like, inspiration is for amateurs, right? So you show up at your thing and you do the thing regardless of whether you're inspired or not. But what Don Webb talks about is finding ways to harness energy, like through yogic practices and pranayama and all that sort of stuff. We can affect our energy, but it's also like drawing upon music that inspires us for certain reasons, or playing a game, or watching a movie, or reading a book, or just hanging out with a person. We've all experienced those people that when we hang out with them, we leave feeling full and inspired, and unfortunately there's people that even though we love them, like you can feel a little bit heavy afterwards, and I'm not saying to not hang out with those people or anything. It's just be aware of what you're trying to do for that day. Like if you're trying to do something creative or inspiring for the rest of the day, just making sure that you can set up those little things to facilitate that. And I feel like it's all kind of connected. Anyway, we've gone on a tangent again. Feel free to just rein me in if I go on too many tangents, because it'll happen.
Not at all. But yeah, I hear you. You gotta kind of be in the mood to deal with certain things some days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been trying to watch a movie at night lately, and that is amazingly inspiring, as long as the movie's to my liking. But
yeah,
I see a lot of owls and masks behind you. Might you want to talk a little bit about some of the stuff you've got?
Yeah. I mean, how much time you got? So these are just two. These I just got at an op shop. I just have love picking up things from the op shop. And I just got these because they look cool. But, I really love that kind of idea, I guess, of wearing a mask to transform ourselves. But also it was because of the light and dark aspects of it. But yeah, these are... Sorry. I forget what they're called. I'm having a mental blank. But they're the Venetian masks, I think, from like the Venetian Masquerade balls. So, yeah, I love that aesthetic as well. Like, I've always really liked that kind of, what would you call it? Like masquerade ball, Venetian Renaissance kind of crazy carnival vibe as well. Yeah, I really like that kind of vibe. But yeah, all the stuff it's just, a myriad of different books. I'm redoing the house at the moment. I'm rejigging some stuff. So some of this stuff is there on purpose. A lot of stuff there is just because I've just put it there for the time being. But yeah, the owl was just cool. I just got it at the op shop. But yeah, I mean, there's lots of aspects to it. Like so each, it depends what you want to talk about. I feel like any of these items could go on like a massive tangent. But the owl in particular, one, it just looks cool, but it's also linked to Lakshmi, the goddess Lakshmi in the Tantric or Hindu view. Because each deity in Tantra has they call it a mount. So it's like an animal that they ride, or a creature that they ride. And it's also their way of interacting with humans, right? I love that like term that like animals are the fingertips of the gods, in that, they communicate to you through animal. And who was it? I was actually chatting to one of the guys from the Rune Guild, and he mentioned this. I don't want to steal his quote without quoting him, but he said something along the lines of getting to know your local animals really, really well can lead you to notice when they're acting strange, right? Because he said something along the lines of, if you know how a fox usually acts, then you know that if they do something out of their usual behavior that's strange, and without knowing that animal deeply enough, you won't notice when it's doing something that is outside its usual behavioral patterns. And usually if it's doing something strange, and not always, it's like tricky to take every little thing as a sign. I mean, Aleister Crowley would probably say different. Like, wasn't that his thing? Like, to take everything as a sign. But I think it's trying to discern what is, you know, a message to you. But yeah, that's one way. And so when you're working with a particular deity, at least in the tantric tradition, you can notice if an animal behaves strangely or shows up, then that might be a little message. Like, for example, when I was working with Ganesha, which has been a big deity I've worked with, I was going to teach at a festival, right? So this is years ago, before I was really like teaching Tantra a lot. And, you know, they say that in order to share the deity's mantra, in order to share like the deity work with others, you need to get an okay from the deity. And, you know, what does that actually mean? You know, some people might be like, okay, cool. You know, for me, I needed something tangible. And it came to the point where the festival was like a month out. I'd given them a vague description of the event that I was going to run. You know, I just call it like elemental, magical, ritual thing. And then I wanted to show up and run a whole ceremony based around summoning Ganesha. But I hadn't got my message yet. And I was just sitting there and I was like, maybe I'm going to have to do something else. And I was sitting there outside in my back garden with a laptop. And I just saw this little mouse just run across and just stop and start kind of like it looked drunk, basically. I think it wasn't well, but it was acting super strange. It just didn't leave. But yeah, so that was because Ganesha's mount is a mouse. So, and there's a lot of symbolism there in that because Ganesha is a giant elephant, he should be heavy and he should crush a mouse, right? Like there's no way he can ride a mouse, but he's so lighthearted and so, you know, even though he's one of the biggest deities, like size-wise, he's so weightless and lighthearted that he can ride a mouse. And so, yeah, and so that was like, you know, my little confirmation. Like, okay, cool. Thanks, Ganesha. And I ran the ceremony. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear you. Sometimes like, okay, is this a sign or is, you know, are the birds just flying that way because it's that time of the day, you know?
Yeah.
That's cool. I like masks as well. They have such a varied way of being able to be used. You know, like go back to the Greek theater stuff. So that's cool.
Yeah, and I kind of perceive magic as almost putting on a mask or maybe taking off a mask, depending on how you view it. Because I think, you know, because my background has been massive on ceremonial magic and doing lots of different versions and seeing the parallels between it. Like the one parallel that seems to be through all magical traditions is this shifting of state. And I kind of see magical ritual as kind of dialing into the back end of the universe, putting in an order, and then shift and then hanging up the phone and dialing back. So I think, you know, in the courses like I've done, because Matt, you've been in a couple of my courses and stuff, and I use this analogy a lot, but, you know, imagine if you're picking up a phone to dial in an order, right? And you pick up the phone, dial in an order, and then you don't hang up the phone. And the person on the other end of the line thinks you're still ordering, right? And so, you know, magical ritual for me is like shifting a state into like a magical state. So picking up the phone. So some people never pick up the phone properly. They're just like shouting out, I want pizza, or I want this, but they're never actually learning how to dial the number to the pizza place. And, you know, on the other end of that, they might learn how to dial in, but they don't know how to hang it up. And so, you know, the pizza guy is on the other end of the phone. He's like, all right, cool, get him pepperoni. And then, like, you know, you don't hang up. And they're like, oh, actually, and add this and add this and add this. And you've walked off the phone. And they're just listening to conversations. And so you start getting all these, like, weird pizzas delivered to you because you haven't hung up the phone. And so I think, you know, magical ritual is learning how to pick up the phone and also how to hang up the phone and forget that you ordered until your pizza comes. But then on the same thing, it's like, okay, but you also need to make sure that what you're dialing in for pizza is a pizza shop. So, you know, I have my background, like how I kind of first started doing practical magic was working with the Goetia, like Goetic evocations and things like that. And that was awesome to me because it felt magical. It felt scary and it felt like it garnered enough emotion. And, you know, you would quickly learn that, like, if you're calling up a particular spirit for a particular purpose, if it's not really its domain, you might get a weird pizza. And so, like, you know, for example, like, because my main, one of my main modes of sorcery is working with the runes, like you would know, Matt, like, you know, if you're trying to call in one thing, but you're using a different rune, you're going to get you might get a strange flavor to it. And so not only are we learning to pick up the phone, learning how to communicate what we want as well. That's part of it. You know, you can't just like speak gibberish on the phone, or that you're not going to get, you know, a very good pizza or what you want. But it's also making sure that you're calling a pizza place. You know, if you call, you know, if you like, okay, cool, I've got this ritual I'm going to do. I've got this spirit lined up. I'm going to get a pizza. So you pick it up and you start ordering a pizza, and they're like, oh, this guy's ordering pizza. What do we do? We don't do pizza. This is a Chinese shop. You know, like, oh, let's just try it. Let's give him something, you know, and you get like this weird, like, rice lumpy thing, you know, and you're like, I didn't order this. And they're like, mate, you ordered the wrong, like, you called us. We tried our best, you know? So it's like, yeah, trying to, you know, do all those things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally does. Absolutely. It's like figuring out first what you even want, which, you know, meditation and yoga comes into play there a lot, I think. Yeah, I started out with Goetic magic in my teens, and I was thinking, my God, there's all these perfect lines geometry-wise. I could never do this because of that. So I kind of gave up on it for that reason.
Yeah, Goetic magic definitely wasn't like the traditional path. Like I started reading. I probably got it here somewhere. Here it is. So this was like one of my first. So ceremonial magic, Joseph Lazowski. It's intense. Like, it is probably one of the, like, I don't get freaked out easy, like, but it freaked me out. And I think that's what I liked about it, because at that point in my life, I didn't believe really any of this stuff was real. I kind of hoped it was, but reading this, like, he's old school, like, grimoire, like, by the book, like, one evocation is like 3 months prep. And, you know, so you got to draw the angelic name at the right, you know, like, planetary hours. And, like, you've got to, get your sword a particular way, and, you know, get your pentacle. Like, it is intense. Like, to the point I started, like, getting ready for an evocation, and just, you know, something would happen. I get called into work or something, and I'd miss that day and have to start again. And it was terrifying, like, you know, reading some of the stuff, and even, you know, having some weird things starting to happen. But I loved it at that time. It was like an opportunity for me to have my skeptical walls broken down. But I never ended up doing any of the evocations in that book. So it was focused on a grimoire called the Heptameron. And yeah, it seemed like a really intense grimoire. But I ended up finding a couple other books, Michael Kelly's. Like, I loved his point of view of evocation. But I actually found E.A. Koetting's work. So I know a lot of people have like also, I think, you know, I don't know what to say about it, but yeah, he's a very dramatic guy. So, you know, and he gets made, I feel like he's just a meme in so many circles. Like, a lot of people make fun of, like, he's a storyteller. He's like very dramatic, but, like, I've got to give it to him. Like, he really, I've got to give credit to the way he changed my perspective on how to work with spirits and grimoires and stuff. At the time, it was like pioneering for me to find someone who had actively worked with, like, Goetic beings and things, and wasn't like, you got to, like, bind them up, and you've got to, you know, make sure this, or you're going to die, and all this sort of stuff. It was, like, so nice to have that kind of demonultrist rather than, like, demonologist viewpoint, because, like, as I understand it, demonologist, old school grimoire magic, summon it up, point the sword, and make sure you do your cast your circles good, because they're going to be pissed off at you. Whereas demonultry, I don't know, it's kind of like being nice to your Pokemon. It's like you call it up, you're nice to it, you converse it as a friend, you build a relationship, you can make some offerings to it and build it that way. And I've had really, really good results. in that. You know, a lot of people, you know, I like kind of tense up when I talk about goetic spirits, but I've had really good results. I must admit, though, there is some weird chaosness to it that doesn't come with a lot of other things. And, you know, I think I always had in my head that I never got any, you know, negative aspects to it. And I still stand by that, because, like, what is negative? But I did get a lot of strange, unexpected, I don't know, auxiliary effects that weren't always ideal, but it's always led me to a good spot. So,
same here. I wonder if that's like the feelings that we take into it because of our background and stuff, like being raised and religiously. Because I have the same experience, pretty much.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm glad I got into it. And you know, I haven't I think it was only like a couple of years ago that I summoned my last goetic being. I might again in the future if I want to, but I'm just focusing on other things at the moment. But yeah, it was a good introduction for magic to me. It felt like I how I wanted magic to be. Because I think one thing that I don't see talked about enough in occult practices is the fun. You know, I think a lot of people in occultism take it very seriously, and you know that's why I like chaos magic as well and things like that. You know, they seem to have a lighthearted approach, and it's funny. It's a paradox. Like, to me, it's the most serious thing that I've ever done in my life. The amount of discipline and focus and respect and just absolute, you know, dedication to magic is more than I pursued into any other vocation, any other practice. But yet, like, it's also fun for me. Like, I do it because I want to stand in a circle and summon up strange creatures in the middle of the night. And, you know, it's just, it feels great. It imbues wonder into my life in a way that nothing else can.
Can you explain for our audience what that being is that you summon? Can you explain to them, like, you know, what it is and how you would summon it, or what, like, why would you summon it?
Should I give them the wrestling disclaimer? It's like, these moves are done by trained professionals, and if you choke slam your friend through a table, it may not work out the way that it does when you view it on television. So yeah, so definitely take your time. Like, I studied the grimoire tradition for probably at least 1.5 to 2 years before I went and did that. That was both a blessing and a curse, because I overthought it, and I really like if I went back, I probably would have started practicing sooner. But because I was reading like stuff like Liszewski's work, which basically said if you mess this up, you're gonna die or you're gonna destroy your life, I was really taking it a lot slower. So essentially, my process was picking out a spirit out of the 7-2 Goetia. You don't have to do that with I mean, I'm releasing, like, I've got a course called Mage and a grimoire with spirits. Michael Kelly's got a whole grimoire called the Grimoire, the Sevenfold Serpent, which I mainly use now. That's like my main conjuration grimoire, because it's just really, really effective and really simple. So you can kind of do this in any way. But so my process then, and kind of is now, I would pick out a spirit that I kind of feels good and fits the idea, and then I would just get to know it. Yeah, I would research everything I can find online. I would try to find other people that might have, you know, summoned it, and that again is a double-edged sword, because that can flavor your experience, like that can prescribe your experience. So, you know, it's just like taking things with a grain of salt, but just making it real. Like, you know, when you start to get to know someone, or it could be a celebrity, or, you know, a character in a book, right? The more backstory you give to a character in a book, the more real that character is going to be. And to me, like, you know, this is a big conversation, but there's not a lot of difference between me reading a fantasy book and really like getting to know that character and looking up information about a goetic demon. You know, it's the same kind of process. And so the more I get to know that character or that being, the more real it becomes in my world, and the connection starts to deepen. Then I would practice drawing the sigil, make sure I can like do it pretty well. I might, even if I wanted to really like dedicate, I might get a candle and like carve the sigil into the candle, and maybe just, you know, do like a pre-ritual little ritual, like maybe every night for like say 9 days leading up to the conjuration. I might be like, hey spirit dude, like I'm wanting to build a relationship with you. I'm going to call you, just giving you notice ahead of chance. Like, you know, I noticed that you didn't accept that Calendly link I sent you, so I thought I'd get this candle, and, you know, just like setting it up. So it's not like a, you know, I was like, what would I prefer? If someone was going to conjure me, I'd probably want some notice ahead, and I'd want like, you know, a little bit of foreplay, a little bit of dialogue before it, right? So I would like do that, and then eventually I would call it on that night. So the process of calling it, I usually would draw a circle around the whole area. So I was lucky to find, I grew up near this park that has this big like circle, like amphitheater thing in the middle of this hill. And so I did my first conjuration there, and it was in the middle of the night. I drove down to Brisbane because I was living on the Sunshine Coast, and it was a foggy night. It was perfect. It was underneath this big tree. And so, I mean, I've done these conjurations in the corner of my tiny little student apartment as well. But obviously the more space and the more, you know, theater you can create will enhance the emotion and the effect. And so I would draw a circle. I would draw this sigil in the middle, and I would stand within the circle, right? So this is probably going against a lot of the grimoire traditions. They, you know, where you create a circle around you, and then you have the conjuration triangle or the binding triangle, and then you summon the spirit inside that triangle, and it stays there, and then you're separate from it. So I was going against everything, and this, I think, why it was really powerful, my first one, because I'd had imbued from the classical grimoire tradition that what I'm about to do is stupid. You know, I'm about to conjure this spirit inside the circle that I'm in. And so I took a lot of courage, to be honest, to break through that, those, you know, kind of mental barriers. So yeah, essentially go in, I hit something 9 times to start the ritual. I called in, I can't even remember what I called in, filled my cup, drank my sacred liquid to kind of imbue that sense of magic. And then I did the conjuration to the spirit. And then I just used my imagination as much as possible. So I think the aspect of practicing magic, which I don't like, at least I did, it was different to what I expected. Even though I didn't think it would happen, there was a part of me that was hoping that the incense that was there would start to take a form of this, you know, big spirit, this monster looking thing, and it would speak to me and I would hear it. And, you know, like, none of that happened. It kind of was, you know, I did feel a little bit of a presence, but I was definitely more stuck in my senses, wanting to, like, my 5 senses. You know, I like the birds did kind of jump out of the trees during like the peak of the conjuration and stuff, you know, which was kind of cool. But I just went with it. But the thing is, like, what I asked for happened. It like happened within a couple of days, and it happened in a like crazily alarming rate. And so, you know, it's tricky that I think we watch so many movies and so many things where we have all these special effects that when we're doing these things, there is like this visual thing happening, but we have to create that ourselves. And, you know, it really is important to practice using your imagination. You know, I think like honing your muscles. And I think that's what yoga is good for, right? You know, because a lot of people will go in and do a ritual and it might work. You know, there's like beginner's luck is a thing in ritual where I think it's so new and so novel and so exciting that you do conjure a lot more emotion into it. But what started happening was things weren't working as well when the fear was over and done with, when the novelty was over and done with, and I wasn't afraid of these beings as much. I didn't get as good results. So it was like actually time for me to really start working on my magical muscles. And, you know, a lot of those things that we find in modern occult practices of doing that is through yogic practices. So one thing I see in the grimoire tradition, it's like they instead of doing the reps, instead of doing all the like training your muscles and really getting your concentration, everything strong, they tend to have very elaborate rituals which kind of it replaces that, right? So instead of doing lots of reps and getting your muscles strong and then being able to sit, imagine this whole thing happening and then get the result, you have to do all these like complex rituals, because then it keeps your mind focused, right? You kind of have to read this thing and then do this action and do that, and it puts you into a trance. And so that's why I think the grimoire tradition, medieval magic, and complicated ritual and ceremony is really, really beneficial if you're willing to put in the work to learn it. But either way, you have to put in the work. You either have to learn these elaborate things, sanctify all these like ritual objects and all that sort of stuff. Whereas I've sat and I've done an entire ritual through just my visualization and my meditation, and I've had really good results. But but a lot of that comes from training through yogic practices, the ability to build that, to imagine that, and all that. But I try to do both, right? Like, even though I know technically I could do a lot of these magical workings just through my meditation, it's not as fun. I still go out into like a dark park at 1 a.m, and even though I know I can do that all in my head, I want to like reinforce the wonder and all that sort of stuff as well. So it's finding a balance between the two. So yeah, I think people overlook the benefit of yogic practices in developing your magical muscles and just amplifying everything that you do.
Definitely, yeah. And to feel energy, and to build it up and be patient, and all that. I'm sure yoga is good for. I know I just do it on the room side. I haven't joined you too much for the yoga, but your meditation courses have been really great. What might you want people to check out? We'll put the links in the description, by the way. But what have you got coming up for people to check out?
Yeah, I've got quite a few things. If I can just quickly touch on one thing you said, I'll try not to go on a tangent, but that's actually something that for anyone else who is in a similar state that I was, I thought, because what you just said is feeling the energy. I think a lot of people that get into spirituality and magic are natural intuitives. It has been a lot of work for me. I have not been like, I've also had that story that I'm not a natural intuitive. I guess I am, but it's something that I've worked on. When I first did all those rituals and summonings, I was very much in my head. I was looking for physical, like observable phenomena, and I really didn't feel much at all. And whatever I did feel, I was completely like dismissing the tangible stuff. And so if anyone is in a similar thing to me, that you might not like feel things, it is definitely a skill, and I'm still continually working on it. But exactly what Matt said, like it is a skill that you can build through yoga, and it's the sending and receiving. You get better at speaking magically, and you get better at listening magically as well. And it's both are important. So yeah, so as far as what I'm running, my main thing that I recommend everyone to start with is my course just simply called Mage. So I like that archetype. So when I was growing up, a big influence on me was these games called Final Fantasy, and they were role-playing games, very story-driven games. And I love the character class in their mage, right? And that was like, I don't know, it just affected my view of like, a mage was a magic user. But they also focused on elemental magic, which is what Mage is primarily about. So we work in Mage. It is like a basic introduction to magic. So we go through learning like introduction to runes and divination, tarot, a few other aspects, and like what is a ritual, what is magic, what is divination. It's like the course that I wish was around when I first got into magic, because it kind of helps you kind of digest a lot of the like often conflicting information that's coming in, allows you to get a center point and an axis to work from, and then we can branch out. So it's kind of paradigm neutral in the way that it can plug into any real like magical system, but it is primarily using techniques from classical tantric ritual. And so we're focused on the five tantric elements, which are earth, water, fire, wind. So similar to air, but we call it wind, and then void or space, right? And so this is actually the classical 5 chakra system. So that's probably another whole conversation we might have time for. But essentially, there are many different chakra systems. The one that we call the chakras these days, the 7 chakra rainbow system, is an entirely modern invention from Western occultism. It was facilitated mainly by Blavatsky and the Theosophical Society in a certain there was 3 books, one publication by Theosophical Society, 2 other occult books that all drew from a not so great translation of a 17th century Sanskrit publication, right? So it was a 6 chakra system that they took, added another chakra onto, and then those three publications turned into everything we know. So there is no evidence of a rainbow 7 chakra system that we know it, and the psychological associations are not what chakras were originally used for. They were used for installing usual deities or abstract concepts. So you could say that the psychological associations are abstract concepts, but they all tend to keep us a little bit too much in the intellectual realm, as opposed to the more like esoteric abstract realms that the original chakras are used from. I'm not saying that it's not valid. I love the 7 chakra system. It's great. It's basically Maslow's hierarchy of needs installed through your body. It's fun. It's a great system. It's just not traditional tantra, which doesn't matter. But I just wanted to clarify that, because people think it's the only chakra system. So I work with a slightly older 5 chakra system, which is based on the 5 elements, and it's kind of what evolved into the modern chakra system. So we work with the 5 chakras, the 5 elements, and then we kind of branch out into magic in a lot of other realms and practices through that, and give you a working ritual and mini grimoire that you can use to do that. And then if you really want to deep dive, you can do a 200-hour yoga teacher training with me, which is like a lot more elaborate and a lot more commitment for that. And then I also just create smaller courses and collaborations. I've got a collaboration for a tarot course. I've got my rune course, which is releasing later this year, really focusing on Gulda. And yeah, probably a million other things that are likely to happen in the next few years.
How about how to conjure? I know I would sort of like to get into that. Would you be open to maybe doing a conjuring class on how to do that?
Yeah, sure. So Mage has that. So like we're learning the 5 elemental system to be able to create a form of ritual for conjuring. So it is all about conjuring. So it's like we use the 5 elements to call in the directions, to create a safe space, to create a supportive like matrix of energy, to then use that to summon a deity or to summon a spirit. And I've created 5 spirits to summon as part of that process to practice with. But in and of itself, those spirits are like extremely powerful. You could just use that grimoire on its own for years, and the more you use it, the more powerful it will become. But you can use that same ritual structure to then call a goetic being if you wanted to call like anything. So yeah, that was the design. It was like kind of a template to use for pretty much anything you wanted. But yeah, I love teaching this sort of stuff, and 100%, if you guys wanted to collaborate on a conjuring class, I would be down to do that.
Definitely something. I don't really conjure. I just would like to see, what that's all about, and if it could help with my financial situation, because it's very grim at this point. Not that I mean, we're not like, you know like that and we're going to be homeless, but I mean I mean that could happen. Something like that could happen, but hopefully not.
Yeah. I
But
mean, 100%. That's something that I recommend people starting with as well, like conjuring something tangible like money or something, just to show you that this stuff works and it can be used for things. But it's also not that simple. Like, part of it is understanding what your own limitations are. So understanding what your personal, like, ceiling is, but then also making sure that the process you have internalized. So I could run you right now through a conjuration, but you could be very distracted on all the different pieces of it. When you're calling in the mantras for each element, it doesn't mean anything to you, so it doesn't ignite emotion. Like you trying to hold all these visualizations at once would take all your energy up just to try to like understand. And then also the thing that we're conjuring, you like never heard the name before, you don't really know what it means, so you don't have that like emotional attachment to it. And so it might work. And this is the tricky part, because I do run festival ceremonies once off, so it's like trying to create that space and trying to get people a result. But usually it's like an hour or 2 hours to the actual ritual. The conjuration only usually goes for like 15 minutes, but like the workshop might be 3 hours, and it's prepping you for that 15 minutes to do that really, really effectively. But also it's like understanding what you actually want, because if you want more money, like what do you want that money for? In the runes, like Fehu is a means to an end. But I've tried to work with Fehu and work with money, and if I don't have a clear path for that energy to go to, it's just like, it doesn't really go very far, right? But if you can create like this constant funnel into something, then that is more sustainable. But yeah, like I've also just conjured like surprisingly big amounts of money out of nowhere for something I really, really needed. But
like a house. I mean, like a bigger house. So like I would like to build my own house. Now there's like, oh well, my I have a full-time job plus I have 3 shows, so technically I have 4 jobs. So maybe like funneling more money, getting a raise or something, or even getting more Patreon supporters, which I know Matt would be loving every minute of that as well, because our Patreon goes where we split everything down the middle fairly.
Yeah.
So that would be nice, something to conjure, more Patreon supporters at this point.
Yeah.
But I definitely would like, at least another house, a bigger house for my son to run around in. And so far, I think my man is going to help with that. It's just when he was telling me, I want to do this for you, I was like, I've never been in that kind of situation to where, I've always, everything I have, I worked for. And that's because, my parents instilled in me that you aren't lazy. You don't have 5 baby daddies. You have, and you're on welfare, that you work hard for what you need and what you get. And so my man kind of babying me and saying, we're going to take care of this, is kind of like, I've never had that happen before. So it's kind of new in that, but yeah, I mean, everyone wants those Patreon supporters, or that support, that we're doing these shows, and that we're kind of not doing them for free. But, we understand that even in America, money is very tight, because as we all know about Agenda 2030, where we are supposed to own nothing, be happy, and eat sea bugs. So, I mean, I think that in our society, it's a lot harder to get that support because, you know, people are struggling everywhere. So it's,
Yeah.
it would be
And
nice, but I mean, it's something that we could funnel, because I do have like a main job where you were saying how you like to tear speakers apart and stuff. I tear computers apart for a living
yeah,
and put them
cool.
back together and make sure they work.
Yeah, so there's something really interesting I'd love to touch on there that I'm still, you know, constantly working through, and I found a lot of people are working through, is that our identity limits us. And this is a very like tantric view, in that, so in tantra they say the ego is not bad. The ego is fine as long as it's fluid. It's when our identity becomes static and stuck, then we kind of limit our ability to grow and to evolve. And so in something like money, it's kind of noticing where your current ceiling is and trying to push past it a little bit, but not too far where it kind of like there's so much resistance. So for example, like if you just like sit for a moment, just take a nice big breath in through the nose, out through the mouth, maybe an audible sigh out, and just sit back into your seat or however, whatever state you're in. And if you were to say to yourself, I'm going to make $10 million in the next 24 hours. Yeah. And and like, you know, I don't know about you guys, but that's not realistic for me, right? And so there's an internal little like feeling that goes off in my body that's basically just like bullshit, right? So where, like, if you also get that, where do you get that, and how does that feel, right? So if I say to myself, I'm going to make $10 million in the next 24 hours. So for me, it feels like a little bit of indigestion, right? And like, this is different. Like this can show up differently in my body, like each time. So for me, it's like a tangible indigestion around here, like kind of like around my heart space, like sternum area, right? But if I'm like, well, you know, what's something I know I can do? I am going to eat today. Like my body's like, cool, yeah, that's super doable. We can eat today. Or, you know, and then you can start to move up from that. Be like, okay, I'm going to make $10, or I'm going to make $1 in the next 24 hours. I'm like, yeah, that's super possible. And you can start going, I'm going to make $10 in the next 24 hours. And just start to notice when the indigestion starts, or when like the bullshit, bullshit meter starts to flicker, right? And so we want to, you know, find like and push our edge a little bit. But the thing is, like, the subconscious is really intelligent. And so if we're telling ourselves bullshit and like over and over again, and it doesn't happen, then like it lessens our magical effect on our subconscious, right? And so that's why like magical ritual can start to bypass that conscious mind that calls bullshit and drop something a little bit deeper. But again, it's not infallible. You know, I think people think magic like it does away with all the ceilings and all the rules. I don't think that's the case. I think it just bends them or extends them a little bit. Yeah. So you've got to work. It's like twofold. You got to work on your own capacity to hold your success. And then you got to get good at penetrating into your like through your like into your subconscious mind and actually doing the things as well. You know, it's like maybe it's threefold.
Would subliminal, I can't say it, subliminals, would that also help to reprogram your subconscious and make you more positive, I guess?
I don't know. Like for me, it depends what you mean by subliminals. I self-created subliminals, I think, are very effective for me. Like if like I make a sigil, I make a bind rune, and I load it, and I know what it's done, and then I put it on a wall, and I let it just constantly filter in my subconscious. But you know, some guy, you know, like on relaxing flute music that's going to say to me all night, you are worth it. You know, you can make your dreams come true. You are worth $1 million gazillion dollars. That just like, you know, it might work for some people, like, but my bullshit meter is just like, whatever, man. Like, you know, if it was like something a bit more realistic, it was like, cool, you can make, you know, an like $2,000 more this year than you did last year. I'm like, you're right, random voice on the internet. I can do that. So I think it's trying to find the balance, if that makes sense. Yeah. I'm all for self-created subliminals. Or subliminals by someone you know and respect and understand like what they're doing. But random subliminals off the internet haven't worked for me. That doesn't mean they don't work. I think, I've just got a lot of skepticism in my body that kind of runs rampant sometimes.
And I think that runs rampant in all of us as we sit there and go like, oh yeah, right. I'm going to listen to the subliminals that I can't even hear. And it goes right to your subconscious, and then you're supposed to reprogram your subconscious, and then things are just gifted to you. You know what I mean? I have seen a little bit of success with subliminals, but also my teachers, Cassandra Ingman, which her links are also down in the description. Whereas we made it's like a never ending, or it was part of like a spell book, I think. And it's like a never empty wallet. And it's where you put all the, herbs and stuff. And I put it like right into the wallet. So like the cinnamon and the bay leaves. And then of course, she said, when you spend the money, just say, I spend this money, but I'll get it back 1,000,000-fold. And knock on wood, since I've done this spell, my wallet has not been empty. In fact, I just got a tip today at work, So, I mean, I think the subliminals can work. And I think that, some of that magic can work as long as you believe it. But I agree with you that maybe you should hear your own voice and play it while you sleep, saying like, I will make $1 million in a year or something.
Yeah.
But make it more realistic, but your own voice saying it.
Yeah. Well, what you just described to me is like operative magic rather than subliminals, as I understand it, because you feel like you've done enough work in a way that you give credence to by a person you give authority to, who taught it to you, in order to shift something in you that like, I've done the work, I've shifted now. And I think that's what magic is. But what you're saying, I think, is something that is often overlooked, even by me, is the reinforcing of that. Like, it's like, making the change, doing the thing, while also creating an environment that is going to support that. It's like, we all have a habit. It's like, oh, I'm going to give up smoking. Cool. I've had this big revelation. I'm going to give up smoking. But if you don't put yourself in a supportive environment to facilitate that, it's going to, not support that. And so same thing magically, like, you did the work, you did a working to create that mindset. You're going to facilitate it. But then you've also kind of been, supporting that through habits and all that sort of stuff as well. I think that's great. I think that's like I've got a similar thing where I found, I don't know how I got it. I've had it for like, probably like 15 years now. I've got an American dollar note, and I can't remember how I found it, but I kind of did like a little super simple little thing. As long as I have this with me, I'm always going to have money. And the trick for me in that statement was, that is true, even on a mundane level. Like, if I have this, I do technically always have money. And so I've like tricked myself into like making an obvious mundane statement, but that also has a very deep, like deeper statement to it. And it's good because I can't actually really spend it here. So even if I did have money left and I'm out of money, I can't spend it as easily as I could. Like I think, and it's still in my wallet, and I've never run out of money. I mean, technically, I always have had it, so I've never run out of money. But like, actually, like when I'm really down and out, like it kind of like generates, I feel, money and stuff like that. But yeah, the beautiful thing about magic is there's unlimited ways to do it, like whatever works for each of us. And that's why it's such an art form as well as a science. Because yes, there's steps and there's tried and tested methods to work magic, but it's so mysterious and will always remain mysterious. And I think that's what this concept Runa is to me. Like the Runa is like the, kind of the mysterious essence of the cosmos from like a runic view, and like Ryantel Runa is the kind of creed of the Rune Guild. But for me, if I pursue something I know I will never reach, like what kind of life is that? And I think that's the thing, is like, why would you pursue something with all of your heart that you know you will never actually reach or touch or hold? And it's because I believe that it will lead me, following that thing, or, like going towards that thing will lead me to other things which are just as good, or if not better than I wanted. And I think, like you said, it's like, yeah, kind of like following that mystery. Anyway, I don't want to go so many things I want to touch on.
I
Maybe
know.
might have
And
to do a part
we
two.
usually do like an hour, so we're giving a little leeway because, like I said, school's back in session, so we have a little more time to go into some depths. But we definitely have to have you back on because, I mean, there's so many tangents we could both, or all three of us could go on. I'm sorry, this way. That way, Matt. You're that way. But yeah, we definitely have to have you back on because there's so many. I don't know the runes as much as you and Matt would know. I actually did take a tarot course from my teacher, and I understand the tarot much better now. And Matt and I just did a tarot reading a couple weeks ago on each other, and I know, Matt, we really need to get back into that. But I'd like to thank my guest because we do have to wrap up. I have more editing to do with my current, my other show. I just want to do some shameless plugs. And if Matt, if you have some shameless plugs, you can do them. On Curt Hennig Was the Best, Changed My Mind. We have episode 48 just dropped. I do 4 of his promos, and then we do the match with him and Diamond Dallas Page, where he, I'm not going to promote this. I'm going to promote another episode, but he gets hit with the belt. DDP puts his leg up and the belt comes back and gets Curt right on the lip here. And if you watch the crowd in front, they're like shocked. They're like, is that supposed to happen? And you could see like blood coming out of his, like from his mouth, and he's walking back and he's going like that, really loud. But so if you want to watch that on Rumble, I don't cut anything. YouTube is all audio, so if you want to watch along on a different tab or whatever, you're more than welcome to do that. But just pay attention to the lip, because Curt's lip does get injured there. I learned the hard way that on YouTube, you can't say blood or bleeding, or they won't let you promote your episode. I know it's really stupid, but it's YouTube. What can you expect? But if you go over to Rumble, links will be in the description field. You can definitely check that out. Also, on Pro Wrestling Talk this weekend, it is my host, Angel Riviera's birthday on Saturday. So Pro Wrestling Talk at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, when him and I will do the first hour on YouTube only, or well, YouTube and Rumble, but we're going to do the first hour on YouTube as well. And then the second hour, we go to Rumble. I'm going to sing happy birthday to Angel. And we're also going to review the Bash in Berlin. So the modern wrestling that I just started watching it, to be honest with you, Daniel. So I have to catch up with it, because I'm used to the older wrestling. I mean, really old wrestling. So like, I'm like 80, I was born in 86. So like 89, 90, 91, when I started really getting into
I'm 87.
it.
So yeah, very
87. So, excuse me. So I just really just got into the new modern wrestling, and that's because, they have some great storytelling that they're doing. So catch us on Pro Wrestling Talk, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that's U.S. Eastern Standard Time. Again, when the second hour, we are going to go to Rumble only and show clips, and I get to sing happy birthday to Mr. Riviera. That's going to be extraordinary. So catch me on that. Also, this Friday, I'm also going to be on Angel in the afternoon with Angel Riviera because it one day before his birthday, and he just wanted a bunch of people to come on, which is absolutely fine with me. I did the same thing on 420, which is my birthday, April 20th. So if you want to catch me on Angel Riviera, that's 7 p.m. on Friday, Eastern Standard Time, of course. And then also we'll be right back here on Black Magic Talk. Matt, do we have a guest next week?
Yeah, it's just us.
It's just us. Okay. So I don't know if we're going to do one because next Monday is Labor Day and my son will be home from school. So I let me think about it and see if I have to work that day. If I don't have to work, maybe we'll sneak one in. Like we'll do like a tarot something or other that day. But we may not have one next week. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, if you are interested, since the theme might be around tarot, if you wanted to interview my good friend Cassandra Polke, because she is like, yeah, pretty like the historian tarot reader. If you're interested, I can message her or shoot you her details. So
absolutely, yes, please, yes, and
sure
let us know, or let Matt know because he can get hold of you. But yeah, let Matt know. I'd love to interview her. I also have been just so busy at work lately. We're still working on and Matt, you can do this too if you want to. We were going to try to do some ASMR just to kind of see how our audience takes to it because, you know, we are kind of witches and pagans here. So, you know, I just brought my altar out here to my office and made it a sacred space. I have a little more space out here to kind of run around in. I'm not in my room and confined. So with more space in here, I can actually like walk around and actually do a ritual, which we forgot the moon ritual last time. I was like, oh no, I got off. I was like, oh no, we forgot the moon. But we'll try to do more moon stuff as well. The ASMR, I love that stuff myself. So if you know anybody in the ASMR field or you know, like to do anything with ASMR, Matt, feel free to, you know, to upload it. We'll upload it as bonus content. And if you like it, we can always start another channel with ASMR. So just, you know, let me know in the comment section if that's something that you guys would like to see. Otherwise, we will be here probably next week, if not the week after. And hopefully we can talk to your friend, Daniel Cassandra. So I would love to talk to anybody who has anything to do with tarot because I just myself have learned it. So, but if we don't see you next week, we definitely will see you the week after. So blessed be everybody. I hope you enjoyed this. I enjoyed it with Daniel this week, and we're definitely going to have you back on. So blessed be everybody. Have a great week.